as I was saying at the end of the last segment there, minerals are typically not affected by heat processing while vitamins are. So you do want to make sure some of the best ways to eat your fruit and vegetables is to eat them raw or to only steam them. The higher the heat that you utilize when you cook your vegetables, the more of a breakdown that you're going to have in the vitamin sources. So we're going to look at major and trace minerals as we investigate some of these sources here. So our first two are going to be sodium and potassium. Sodium regulates cellular and total body fluid. It helps to maintain blood pressure, and you can get sources from table salt, processed or prepared foods. Of course, in our country, we talk a lot about reducing sodium content. And that's largely because, again, our country overconsumes high processed and prepared foods that are higher in calories and sodium rather than eating more whole foods. And so for individuals that eat a more whole foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grain diet, very minimal processed food, adding table salt is actually to the meals is good because it helps them to consume the salt they need. However, if you're eating a largely predominant processed or prepared foods, you don't need to add any other table salt. Potassium helps with muscle contraction and also the transmission of nerve impulses, as well as regulates our heartbeat. A deficiency at a moderate level can lead to a risk of hypertension. A severe deficiency can have dangerous effects on kidneys and the heart, so we want to make sure we get enough potassium in our system. Sources could be bananas, cantaloupe, apricots, clams, and halibut, as well as lima beans. Again, so consuming a diet that is well balanced can help an individual meet that. And most people think of potassium and they think of bananas. So if you consume bananas regularly, you're getting enough. Chloride is critical for transmitting nerve impulses as well, maintaining acid-base balance throughout the body. It's a component of hydrochloric acid, which is found in or used in digestion. A deficiency can lead to extreme or constant vomiting, and it can potentially have fatal irregularities in the heartbeat if there's a deficiency in it. And we get this through table salt as well. Calcium is the most abundant mineral in our body. It's absolutely necessary for bone formation. It plays a role in muscle contraction and nerve impulse transmission as well. It can help with weight control and can reduce cancer risk. It also, when we think about the body, it can absorb somewhere between 25 and 75% of it from dietary sources, depending on what we're consuming it with. And deficiency can lead to osteoporosis. So sources are dairy products, green vegetables with the exception of spinach, and sesame seeds are all areas in which you can get calcium, and again, a major and important part of our overall health. Phosphorus is a necessary element for bone formation. It's again used for energy extraction from foods. It's a key building block for DNA. And kidney disease and overconsumption of vitamin D can lead to deficiencies in phosphorus. Prolonged levels of high phosphorus and low calcium intake can also negatively affect bone health, so we want to have good balance between those. Sources here would be yogurt and milk, sunflower seeds, oysters, and beef. Magnesium participates in over 300 cellular reactions. It helps with protein synthesis, DNA formation, blood clotting, muscle contractions, and ATP production. A deficiency in magnesium would result in basically all cellular activity stopping, but the body only absorbs about half of its intake. We can find it in our water, which is a good source for us, considering that we should be drinking a significant amount of water a day, which again would help us not to be deficient. We can also find it in sesame seeds, halibut, almonds and cashews, as well as beans. So eating fish regularly and or your nuts and beans would provide you the sources that you need as well. Sulfur is a component of other vitamins. It's actually created from biotin and thiamine. It helps with protein synthesis, and it also helps with the liver detoxification processes. Some of our trace minerals, one of the first ones and ones that we know a large amount about is iron. Iron helps to transport oxygen in the blood, and it's involved in hundreds of enzyme and metabolism reactions as well as brain development. The GI tract will regulate iron absorption based on the body's needs, so the absorption range can be from 1 to 50%, so having a healthy GI tract is important. It will compete with calcium and zinc for absorption, so we want to make sure that we are trying not to consume them at the exact same time, or if we do, we're having consumption of iron at several points throughout the day in order to receive those types of processes. It's vital for newborns. Sources, you can find it in animal products. This is significantly more effective for absorption. We absorb it better from animal products than we do plants. You can find it in clams, oysters, beef, liver, shrimp, and steak. Plants are lentils and fortified cereals are where we can get it from plant-based products. But again, if you are a vegetarian, you need to make sure that you are consuming lentils and fortified cereals regularly in order to receive the amount of iron that you need, because it's not going to be absorbed as well as if you had an animal product. Zinc helps proteins fold and shape properly, as well as regulating gene expression and cell death, and is essential to the immune function. Deficiencies are characteristic of cereal-based diets, and this can lead to increased infections, abnormal growth, and low birth rates. So it's really important that we get zinc in our diet. Sources are going to be oysters, clams, lobsters, so seafood, or beef. So again, if you're someone that maybe doesn't eat beef, you might want to consider consuming oysters, clams, or lobsters. If you are someone that can't eat those because you may be allergic also to shellfish, you may want to consider having it in fortified cereals. Some of them have it, or in a supplement form, because it can lead to increased infections if we are not having enough of it. Iodine is essential for thyroid hormones or in thyroid itself. It works with selenium, and deficiencies can lead to goiter or an enlarged thyroid, as well as physiological and developmental effects to the brain and body. You can find iodine in most seafood. So most of the food that you eat from the ocean, any fishes that you eat from the ocean, would include iodine in it and would be a good source of that. So again, a well-balanced diet would allow you to get the mineral that you need in order to function for life. So I just want to highlight some key concepts that we have talked about and addressed so far in this lecture. Adequate iron, calcium, and vitamin C help protect against lead absorption in the body. Lead poisoning is a major risk for children in the U.S., particularly because of the older homes that we see, and individuals that live in newer developments or in developments that have recently happened in the West, you would see less of a risk, but for those in homes growing up mostly in the East, this is a very common problem. In fact, lead was not removed from most of our sources until probably a couple years ago. I'd say I think the last probably around 2015. So most of us are going to have some level of lead in some sort of products that we have. And so by having an adequate level of all three of those, it can actually protect against absorbing lead in the body if it were to be consumed by children in any way. Each nutrient is unique, can be derived from distinct sources, and is needed in varying amounts. So because of that, we need to make sure that we're eating a well-balanced diet in order to receive all of the vitamins and minerals that we need for sustaining our lives and keeping us healthy so that we are at less risk for both infectious and chronic diseases. The quality of the nutrient sources is dramatically altered through food processing, so we need to make sure that while we're cooking our food to a level that helps to reduce things like, if, for example, cooking meat, reducing the risk of salmonella poisoning or things like that, or any other sort of food type poisoning bacteria. We also want to consider that we're not overcooking our vegetables. So the idea that I always try to tell people is think about processing measures. The more processing, the higher the heat, the less likely that the less vitamins and minerals you're going to receive. So if you take a fruit or vegetable from your garden in your yard, you wash it and eat it, you're maximizing your fruits and your vitamins and minerals. If you steam it, you're losing some, but not a lot, because it's a lower source of heat that kind of makes them crispier and softer. If you boil it, now you're getting them to a level of a heat that you're going to start to lose those vitamins and minerals within the water and break down those in the food. If you bake it or roast it, you're going to be losing some vitamins, but not at the level of what you would be doing when you boil it. And of course, if you fry it, you're pretty much completely losing the nutrients that you have. So again, the higher the level of processing, the less nutrients you will have. So the best way is raw, steamed, or using a roasting type of approach. Nutrient deficiencies not only have nutrient-specific consequences, but they also can inhibit other nutrients and also affect overall health. So remember, some of these nutrients interact with each other, and the absence of one will reduce the absorption of another or the utilization of another. The two most important factors in micronutrient nutrition is quality and diversity. So we want to make sure we're eating somewhere at we really want to see 7 to 9 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. So the idea is we want to make sure we're eating more of our foods should be coming from these sources than any other sources, and we want to have a variety of them. We don't just want to consume the same fruits and vegetables all the time, but actually have multiple colors and multiple varieties. Nutrition affects health on multiple levels. We can have individual and pointed nutritional deficiencies, but it can also, the absence of some of these nutrients can hinder the body's overarching ability to recover from disease, or even increase our susceptibility to infections and other chronic diseases as well. The most common deficiencies that we see in developed countries are iron, iodide, vitamin A, folate, and zinc. 50% of children worldwide ages 6 months to 5 years suffer from one or more micronutrient deficiency. Globally, more than 2 million people are affected, and I'm going to break down some of these statistics for each of these. For iron, children and pregnant women are at greatest risk. Anemia can actually contribute to 20% of all maternal deaths, and in developing countries, every second pregnant woman and about 40% of preschool children are estimated to be anemic. So this is an issue that we really have to consider globally and even within our country. Iodine is the most important mineral required by the fetus for brain and cognitive development. About 18 million babies are born mentally impaired because of maternal iodine deficiency. 38 are at risk of iodine deficiency, and about 2 billion individuals have inadequate iodine intake. Vitamin D, you can kind of read some of these statistics. I'm not going to go through a significant amount of these, except for children who are at deficit face an increased risk of blindness and death from infections such as measles and diarrhea with a vitamin A deficiency. And this is particularly important in developed countries. One of the things we know about vitamin A is it is a fat-soluble vitamin, so a high dose of vitamin A can cure vitamin A deficiency as well as reduce mortality from measles by 50% and all-cause mortality by 23%. Vitamin A deficiencies are also considered one of the most important predictors of maternal mortality and poor pregnancy outcomes, and so a lot of what we do in developed countries is actually offer vitamin A shots to improve that, a high-dose supplementation. Zinc globally can lead to dietary inadequacy, and up to 30% of people are at risk in some regions of the world. Why is this occurring? Because of food shortages or lack of diet diversity. And we have to be careful because it leads to higher infection prevalence, greater unnecessary